Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks. Jack and Keith's weekend playbook. What a weekend we had in college basketball. We've got MLB opening day here in a couple of days, and we're going to talk about all of that and more with my co-host, Boxing Hall of Fame writer, Michael Spinks.
Biographer. That's how you have to introduce me for a little while yet. Michael
do that.
Biographer.
We'll definitely do that.
My book just came out, Michael Jinx Spinks. You can get it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And now let's move on to the NCAA, Major League Baseball, etc.
Good stuff so far, Jack. We're going to finish that up before we talk.
I took a cheap plug for myself. Got it. That's called a cheap. They're cheap shots and cheap plugs.
That's what these shows are for, to get your word out. This has been a lifelong ambition of yours, and congratulations on a work well done.
And we're supposed to have Michael Spinks on Glove Fist tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as a guest.
Excellent. Check out Frank and Jack tonight with Michael Spinks. Hopefully the connections all go through well. And Jack's also got an appearance on Sirius Radio later today, too, if you want to check it out. 3:30. So good stuff for Jack. Jack, and the rest of the world of sports today, I mean, we saw yesterday some really good basketball games, some that weren't so great, but I think a couple of really, really good games were obviously the St. John's, Kansas game, Iowa upsetting Florida, first number one seed goes down, big surprise there, which sets up a really surprising Sweet 16 matchup, which we'll talk about in a second. Tennessee, Virginia was a great game as well. The rest of them kind of ho-hum, but, you get 3 great games out of 8 on a NCAA Sunday, you've done pretty well. St. John's was in control of this game, especially the second half. It seemed like they were cruising to victory, up 14 with, I don't know, what was there, 7 minutes left in the game? 6-7 minutes left?
Yes, St. John's had control of the whole game until the closing moments. And then what happened? Kansas staged a furious rally. And like you said before the show when we were talking, they beat St. John's at their own game off the defensive boards. Every ball, it seemed like Kansas wanted to grab more. It just seemed that way. And they did. And St. John's was unraveling little by little. We were talking a little, the boxing comparison. It was like St. John's had a big points lead that Kansas was cutting into, and St. John's was just hanging on. And eventually Kansas pulled even, and that's where it got interesting at the end of the game when Kansas tied it up and St. John's was going to have the last shot of the game, and Kansas had a few fouls to give. That's a crazy rule they have in basketball. Oh, it's crazy that the NBA doesn't have it. And in any event, you look at it, but Bill Self, the coach, he was praised for the way he was using his fouls. I saw it just the opposite way. And I think you agreed with me, like you mentioned before the show. They kept fouling St. John's when St. John's was in their own backcourt at the end of the game. St. John's wasn't going to heave a shot past midcourt, make them use time or by dribbling to the front court. Then you foul them at the appropriate time. And after using up a few of their fouls, they were allowed to give at the end of the game. Kansas, they had no extra fouls to give. Okay, and then Dylan Darling has the ball with 3.6 seconds, and he drives past the defense for a layup to win it for St. John's. But if Kansas had one more foul to give, when Dylan Darling was starting to scoot by, they could have slapped him in the arm or whatever and given that foul had they had it to give.
I think they were, first of all, I do agree with you on the fouling strategy. Yes, you use your fouls, but you don't use them as quickly. And I mean, they took time off the clock, but to leave 4-point-something seconds and plenty of time to drive the length of the court. I remember years ago, Danny Ainge doing that at BYU against number 1 Virginia. I remember the same exact kind of thing. He went all the way down the court and just ran to the locker room. This was a kid, though, as far as saving a foul, I'm not so sure because, again, you run the risk of following him in the act of shooting, and then they get free shots with no time left just about. But they were caught by surprise because Darling was the last guy they expected to be taking the last shot or have the ball in his hands near the foul line, and he went to his weaker side of of his game. He's not a good right-handed player. So it fooled Kansas all the way. Great coaching by Pitino. Bill Self, maybe a little. It's probably nitpicking, but just a great game. A matchup of two great coaches. It looked for a while like Kansas was never going to get a ball inbounded again. St. John's press was just tremendous as they built that 14-point lead. And then all of a sudden, Kansas does the same thing to them, and St. John's can't get a ball in or rebound a ball. And it looked like at one point there was as many air balls in that game as there were baskets. Not pretty bad.
And if you saw Patino's reaction at the end of the game, in the immediate aftermath, he didn't know what to think. He didn't know whether to celebrate or to be upset because he knew he escaped. He escaped with the victory. You know, you like to earn a victory, and I'm not saying St. John's didn't earn it, but they escaped with the victory. And Kansas puts all this effort in. They finally pull even, and suddenly the game is over and they've lost. The realization, sets in that they lost. And I kind of wonder what would have happened, Keith, had the game gone into overtime. I kind of feel St. John's would have regrouped. Just my feeling. It's easy to say Kansas had the momentum and it would have carried over into overtime. But at that point, you have to wonder would St. John's have been a little bit demoralized, a little bit shell-shocked or whatever. But they escaped with the victory, and it's on to Duke, a brand new game,
We'll talk about that
this weekend on Friday, I believe it is.
Yeah, we'll talk about the coming games here in just a second because there are some quite interesting matchups, especially for a Sweet 16. St. John's plays ugly. That's what they do. And that's what Rick Pitino's teams seem to always do. They press you 94 feet and they shoot, 38% for the field. I don't know if they shot that much yesterday. They were not shooting the ball well, but they pound the boards, the offensive boards. Michael's asking, and remember, Michael's from the UK, so he doesn't watch all of our sports all the time. Rebounding is obviously very important because if you
Rebounding, Michael, is important. Michael's a boxing fan. Rebounding to basketball is what the jab is to boxing.
There you go. That's a good comparison. If you keep the team off the offensive board, so you rebound defensively well, obviously that's good. But even offensive rebounding is even more important. And St. John's crashes the boards very, very well. But Kansas, Peterson, who kind of disappears at times, disappeared early in this game, disappeared in Kansas' first game. He takes over when they're down 14, and he looks like a guy who just wants the ball. And like when the other Kansas guys didn't want the ball, and he didn't have a great game overall if you look at the stat sheet. But for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, he dominated that game for Kansas and played very well and showed you why he might be one of the top picks.
I think Kansas swarming the board, getting the offensive rebounds, that's what got him back in the game. I don't want to say one team had more desire than the other, but it just seemed that Kansas wanted it a little more. And I think St. John's was just a little demoralized. Like what was happening suddenly? Like Kansas picked up the pace and St. John's wasn't just ready for that.
Rick Pitino talked all week long about how they weren't upset and they weren't focusing on the fact that they felt disrespected with their number
disrespected 5. St. John's. St. John's is favored.
With their number 5 seeding, I'm talking about, by the NCAA tournament committee getting sent out to San Diego. He talked all week how they love San Diego and they were out there.
It's brutal.
I got to tell you, for St. John's, who's a little school in Catholic school in Queens, they traveled very well. They had a lot of fans out there. We expected this to be an overwhelmingly Kansas crowd, and he did too when he went out there. They traveled very well.
San Diego, I've never been to San Diego. I
used to live there.
A beautiful place to live. Absolutely beautiful. But travel-wise, it could be a logistic nightmare out of the way. And if you're coming from New York, to make it to San Diego, something is wrong there with the location. That's how the NCAA has to improve things a little bit. Get a more friendly location for some of these schools, so there's a level of fairness. It's a little harder for teams like St. John's to go to San Diego than it would be, for example, Nebraska, who had one of their games in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Yeah. Purdue's going to have, if Purdue should make it to the Final Four, they're going to have a regional advantage as it's being played like 60 miles from their campus. So we'll see about that. A couple other good games yesterday. And Danny, by the way, Rick Pitino, whatever you think of Rick Pitino, he is a tremendous coach. Just the fourth team he's got to the Sweet 16, which ties, I think, only 4 other guys have ever done. So great job. I guess we'll jump real quick since Rick brought this up. Not one of the best games of the day. UConn did bring a big crowd to Philadelphia, which is not to be a surprise. I think the demise of UConn by people similar, maybe even myself, is a bit overrated as they ran away from a UCLA team.
Well, in the second half, UCLA hung tough for a while.
Danny Fuller, to his what am I trying to say? Kudos to him. He predicted this game was a 1-point game late in the first half, and he predicted, and he's a UCLA fan, he said UConn will run away with this game in the second half. So very good, Danny, for you. Danny Hurley, another great coach, and we could be on a collision course for UConn and St. John's for the 4th time this year. Possibly if we in the Elite Eight. We'll talk about that too. Better games yesterday, though. Iowa beats number 1 Florida, one of the number 1 seed Florida, by 1. In really a back and forth game. Florida was behind a lot of this game. Iowa would try to pull away. Florida would come back. And at the end, they hit a big 3-pointer to seal this victory. And kudos to Iowa. And their new head coach after Fran McCaffrey was fired there. Todd Golden and defending champions go down, and a big surprise to me. I thought Florida would win this game fairly easily. Iowa, one of the last teams to get in as an at-large.
I had the name. I knew Fulgarius. I had to take a little peek at it because it's such a hard first. Alvaro's an easy first name to remember, but Fulgarius again, who was left open in the corner for a 3-pointer.
Design play. That was the play they set up. It was perfectly executed and not well defended, obviously.
No, not well defended at all because he was really wide open.
But that was the play.
In the game, yeah. You can't leave anyone wide open, especially on the 3-point. And when you're up 2 points, the worst that'll happen, it's going to go into overtime if you give up a 2-pointer. When you're up by 2, but I understand you don't want to give up an easy 2 and necessarily go into overtime. But then again, you got to think to yourself too. If you're Florida and you feel you have the better team and you're heavily favored to beat Iowa, okay, you're the defending champions. You take overtime. Yeah, it's a new game in overtime because you're a better team. At least you think you are. You take your chances and play it out. But it's kind of Florida kind of let it all ride on one play. They sagged down low in the post, and they left Fulgarius open for a 3-pointer. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the plan. There was some defensive breakdown, I'm sure, that took place that we didn't hear about.
Yeah.
But, Iowa never should have had a wide open shot like that at the end of the game to decide things.
Well-designed play off the bench and not well defended. And Todd Golden and the defending champion Florida Gators are out in a big surprise. Brian mentions the Big Ten doing well. They're doing very, very well
I think it's a big surprise, not because Florida was considered that strong of a team, because it's Iowa. And Iowa's now taking on, and maybe they're taking on the role of a Cinderella team in this tournament because no one's expecting anything of Iowa going forward.
Well, they're the closest thing to a Cinderella. They haven't been to a Sweet 16.
Cinderella team, exactly. A 9th seed, yeah.
Yeah, it's been 19 years or whatever, 20.
Yeah.
27 for.
Whatever happened to Steve Alford, who used to coach?
Oh God, Alfred's moved on. He might be at Nevada now. He might be at Nevada now. He's still coaching, I believe, but he went to UCLA for a while.
Okay.
I think he might be.
It just popped into my head a moment.
Yep.
So.
He did well at Iowa, actually, and he had some interesting matchups with Coach Knight when he was there. So, because Coach Knight was still at Indiana.
Well, Alfred kind of wanted the Indiana job, but he couldn't say it when Knight was there. And that's why Knight got ticked off at Alfred for a while because of Alfred's silence.
I have a hard time dealing with, and even with Iowa and Jack's comment, I have a hard time classifying power conference teams as Cinderellas. They're not classic Cinderellas like we would think.
No. Siena is a Cinderella team. High Point.
But when they got to the Final Four, that's a Cinderella team.
Someone told me something. We're talking college basketball, so I could spread out. Someone told me something about High Point. I don't know how accurate it is, but I believe it is because the person who told me High Point is in a terrible area, but it's secure. The campus itself is very secure, but students don't leave the campus because the area is really? Reportedly, I was told. Just
do we have
I don't know whether
anybody?
it's accurate. It's high crime. Everything is on campus, and they're given the most elite meals to students to eat, like the best type of food. Anywhere gourmet food in this, not the mess hall food, Keith, that I guess you grew up on or whatever you used to eat when you went to college, but really gourmet food.
So they're like in an all-inclusive resort there, and they don't leave.
Resort, exactly. But you can't leave campus. It's kind of like, I don't want to say like, call it a country club security thing that they just can't leave. Because the area is so bad on the outside, I was told.
It is the home furnishings capital of the world. I'm reading here right now, so that's interesting. But it doesn't say it isn't saying whether it's bad or good. I can tell you that it's in Guilford County, North Carolina.
I'm just saying what I was told. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but it was interesting that was pointed out to me.
Texas 3 wins in 5 days. That's a good call. Listen, they're not. I will give you, if there's going to be Cinderellas here in this tournament, it's Texas and Iowa right now. Obviously, a 9 and 11 seeds. So, by definition, I guess that they're the only. The rest of them are all high seeds. So, they played very well. Tennessee yesterday with a nice one. I like Tennessee actually to get to the Elite Eight. Although my bracket is like totally dead at this point, but I do have Tennessee still moving on. Nice win over a good Virginia team yesterday. They played great defense. Rick Barnes' teams always play great defense. They held Virginia to like 38% from the field yesterday and shot 50% themselves. They don't shoot the ball well historically. This is a good Rick Barnes team.
And let me tell you, Jacoby Gillespie at the end of the game, he was making every foul shot. Oh. He's an 80% foul shooter, but he seems better than that. He's extremely poised. Why on earth did Virginia keep letting him get the ball? He was the one guy.
Yeah.
Double team him. You have to foul. Don't let him get the ball. Let anyone else get the darn ball and foul him. And Gillespie goes to the foul line and just makes one shot after the other late in the game. I don't get it. Isn't there a strategy to double team a guy, even triple team a darn guy? Do whatever you need to do, but don't let him get the ball at the end to go to the foul line because it defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to, get back in the game at the very end.
You got to remember, though, Jack. You got to remember. You got to remember something. The team that has that great foul shooter, they're also practicing getting him the ball at all costs in those situations. So both teams are.
Virginia had a chance. They had a chance at the end. Had Tennessee missed a couple of foul shots. That's the thing about the 79-72 score is deceiving, because it was closer than that. It was a 1-2 possession game towards the end.
Listen, as far as Texas goes, my last word on Texas, their coach says we're not a Cinderella, so I'm not going to call them a Cinderella. Sean Miller says they're not a Cinderella. He doesn't like the term. So they're playing great basketball.
The Cinderella teams really are the real long shots that we see at the start of the tournament. Normally, I'd say they're about 10 or 12 Cinderella teams at the start of the tournament. I'm just approximating off the top of my head. Like I said before, when Siena played Duke, everyone considered Siena a Cinderella type team. Had they won and
They didn't win.
had Siena won that game and then they followed up, they eliminated Duke and then they won their next game. That's a Cinderella story evolving. I'm not sure is Iowa a Cinderella team. I said a moment ago, let's put it this way. They're barely a Cinderella team. If they win it all, I guess you could say they were Cinderella team, because is there anyone outside of Iowa who would possibly even consider Iowa as they predicted they would have a shot at winning the national championship? No one.
No, listen, I can also make an argument that despite their record this year, Nebraska would be considered a Cinderella more than the two teams that we're talking about, because they had never won a game in the NCAA tournament. Iowa's had very little success in the last 20 years. So, I get it.
But the thing about Nebraska, you'd think once they won one game, they're playing with house money. Even if they lose the next one, great, they advance. But Nebraska actually has a good team. That's the thing about it. Nebraska can actually cause a little damage going forward, possibly.
Well, what's very interesting, and I will say this, I made a mistake here. I railed for weeks about the Texas is even getting in the tournament. And so they're in the Sweet 16, so I guess I'm wrong there.
Hey, listen, a team like Miami, Ohio, who got eliminated, at least they won a game, and they showed that they belong. Perhaps their way of thinking, they validated they belong. They got in the tournament, we won the game there. So if it was one and done, it would have been really bad for them, especially if they lost the opening game decisively. So different schools take different things out of the tournament. But we were talking about St. John's before. If they lost that game to Kansas, and if they blew that lead, can you imagine the mindset coming back for next season? Patino would have been deflated, really deflated.
I think they were last year.
Program gone. At least this is the first time, I think, since 1991 or something?
99.
99, I'm sorry. St. John's is getting to the Sweet 16. So even if they lose to Duke, and they're not thinking in those terms, they have, much great ambitions, they take something out of the season. Well, we won a couple of games with Sweet 16. We hadn't done that in 27 years. So it's all relative. It is all relative.
And what's interesting is you got a great matchup you just talked about. There's some great matchups in this Sweet 16. You got Duke and St. John's.
What a game.
Classic matchup. You got Michigan State and UConn, which is a great matchup in the Sweet 16. You've got Arizona and Arkansas, which should be a great, great game. Arkansas is playing great basketball right now. And interestingly enough, you've got two teams that we would think of historically in football, Iowa and Nebraska, playing in the Sweet 16, which is a shocker.
Wow, that is
very well.
Yeah, you know what I love about the Iowa-Nebraska game? Someone has to advance. If they play different opponents, there's a good chance both are finished. But now one goes to the Elite Eight, one game away from the Final Four. And you get this great story. We got to give our predictions for the Thursday games. Friday we could hold off on because we do our weekend show.
I do have them broken out here. So Iowa-Nebraska is one of those games, and I like Nebraska to continue their semi-Cinderella run. How about that? I like Nebraska.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Nebraska over Iowa.
Houston, Illinois. Illinois is playing really good basketball, but Houston just dismantled their opponent on Saturday. And Calvin Sampson, I think, he's going to at least get to another Elite Eight. I think he wins this game. What do you think?
Well, I think Houston dismantles Illinois, so at the very least, it's going to beat them by double digits, like 13 points or so, or whatever.
That's a very good offense in Illinois against a very good defense in Houston. We'll see how that works.
I mean, Houston, you can't penetrate their defense at times.
Right. What seems to be the consensus, Cinderella, Texas will play Purdue on Sunday. Listen, Purdue's playing good basketball as well. Texas, hot, really hot. Danny, I agree with you. But I think Purdue wins here as well.
No, I agree. And then you have Arkansas, John Calipari against Arizona.
Going to be great.
And Arizona, I think, on balance, is considered the consensus best team right now, unbalanced, all in all. Them and Houston, you can make an argument, them, Houston, and of course, Duke with their reputation. We could argue that. But I think Arizona does beat Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm not going to say Arizona's the best team. I'm going to say they are what you just said, the best balanced team in this tournament.
We don't see any upsets Thursday. And
I haven't called that.
I want to pick one, but it's hard.
I'll give you one. I'm going to pick Arkansas to beat Arizona. I'll give you one right now. I originally had Arizona in the Final Four, but now I'll switch up.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona just seems to be so well balanced.
They're good.
It's hard to pick against them. I can see if Houston came up against Arizona.
These are some great games.
I don't know who I would pick there right now, but Arkansas. Well, I'll tell you this: if Arkansas does beat Arizona, they kind of open the door for the remaining teams a little bit to win the tournament, because Arkansas wouldn't have a degree of favoritism over, the other teams, unless, one of them springs a big upset, in the other games.
There's some interesting stories left here. Listen, Nebraska to me is an overlooked story. This team gets to the Final Four. That is a huge story if Nebraska makes a Final Four here this year, and they've got a reasonable opportunity to do it. I think they're going to have to go through Houston, if I'm not mistaken.
If Nebraska somehow, and I doubt it, wins this NCAA tournament, does basketball become more popular than football? And the Nebraska basketball more popular. Interesting, right?
It is interesting and sad all at the same time. That tells you about the state of Nebraska.
Wait. Let me ask you this. The Indiana Hoosiers in football won the national championship. Are they more popular than the Indiana Hoosiers, in basketball? That's an interesting question now.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah, so even though Indiana's a basketball state through and through, you got to look at,
but Indiana
football, they should take the pride in that.
Indiana basketball has been irrelevant for a long time. Like Nebraska football has been irrelevant for a long time, and Indiana proved on the football side that they're not going. That's not a one and done.
If the St. John's Redmen win the national championship, are they more popular than the New York Knicks suddenly?
Well, it's two different.
The St. John's Redmen are already more popular than the Brooklyn Nets.
Yes.
I'll tell you about it.
I will say they may be more popular than the Knicks, but their season will be over. The Knicks will still be playing, so somebody's got to go see somebody.
No. The answer is no, because they're not going to have a ticket tape parade for St. John's. They'll just be invited to Gracie Mansion, big ceremony. There'll be a little something for a couple of blocks. If the Knicks won it all, there could be a ticket tape parade conceivable.
There will be. At 100% there will be. The first one in 60 years almost. Yeah. Come on. Definitely. One side note from yesterday, because I've been talking about this for quite a while on my college sports huddle. I've been saying it's a relatively hot take. I think Bill Self walks away from Kansas after this year. Danny has been talking about how he looks tired on the sideline. He's had some serious health issues the last couple of years. Had to miss a game a month or so ago. Not feeling well at practice, went to the hospital. He's had some heart issues over the last few years. I think Bill Self has probably had about enough of this, similar to some other coaches that have just kind of walked away while still at the top. I think Bill Self walks away. And he said yesterday, and again, I understand the emotions of losing a tough game, but I saw a guy on that podium at the end of that game who is not coming back to that program. I think he might be done.
Yeah, people don't realize how physically taxing coaching is. To do it the right way in practice, you're on your feet, you're moving back, you're moving forth. It's not like the old days where you had Bear Bryant at Alabama sitting all the way on top, looking down, calling up a couple of things on the bullhorn. You're pacing back and forth, and you got the long hours as well. You really want those long hours to be at the office late, looking at game film, meeting coaches, dealing with issues with players, figuring out strategy, dealing with the media.
I think a lot of it, Jack, is the way the game is, or the sport is today, right? Where you got to recruit your own kids every year too. You're not just recruiting new kids; you're recruiting your own kids to come back, and they're doing that now. So it's such a grind. I can understand why some of these old school guys are stepping away.
It's how enjoyable the game is to you. That's the whole thing. And with Bill Self, you don't know what he's thinking. But also, it's not easy to give up that position of power, no matter how great a coach you've been and how legendary you've been within your program. Once you walk away, I don't want to say you've become an afterthought. People respect your legacy.
Great coach.
But everything about you is in the past. It's not in the present. There are no more challenges per se to deal with. I mean, take arguably the greatest coach of all time in college basketball is certainly one of them, Coach K. I mean, what is Coach K now? He's a legacy personality. He's great to be interviewed. I'm sure he can go on all these shows and talk and this and that. But, even around Duke, it's like, it's past. It's just what it is.
They're not going to forget Coach K and
no,
Duke.
not at all. Not at all. He's legendary. He's legendary, but things are a little different. It's not like when Joe DiMaggio years ago, he could walk into any place and the room's going to stop because he was like bigger than life. There are very few personalities like that. Michael Jordan's one of them. Michael Jordan can walk in anywhere, and he's so ridiculously iconic. And I don't mean in a bad way, ridiculously. I mean, he keeps his base as far as power goes as a personality. But in the majority, it's not that way.
I do want to move on to the baseball, but one quick thing you made me just think of, and Anthony, I know Anthony's a huge St. John's fan. It makes me think, you talk about coaches being remembered. Who's the most iconic coach that is remembered that never won a national championship? And I'm going to say it's Louis Carnesecca. And maybe it's just an East Coast thing. Maybe not nationally, he's not. But it's a guy that I can think of who was revered despite the fact of never winning a national championship.
Yeah, when you think of it, there's a great legacy despite him not having won one. Like Jimmy Boeheim at Syracuse won one national championship. If he didn't, Jimmy Boeheim's still been iconic at Syracuse. Yeah, because when you're there so long and you're winning a lot of games, look, Patrick Ewing is iconic amongst the Knicks fan base, but he never quite won a championship.
Yeah.
But these things work in strange ways.
They do, because some guys are still revered. Louis Carnesecca was still revered, never bashed for not winning a national championship. Jim Boeheim for years was bashed for not being able to win a national championship before he did. It's really funny.
We're talking Big East. Raleigh Massimino won one national championship, and he's revered, in large part because of that. If he didn't win that championship, Raleigh Massimino would be, I don't want to say forgotten. I don't mean forgotten, but he wouldn't have been nearly as revered as he is.
I kind of think he'd be more in the Carnesecca.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's like that way. But it's personality. Everyone loved little Louis Carnesecca. I mean, they just loved him. They loved him with the sweater on. Even John Thompson, who was who could be very moody at times, and maybe with justification and fairness to John Thompson. He didn't like to joke around, but he loved Louis Carnesecca. He imitated him with a sweater before the game. Everyone liked Louis Carnesecca.
That was one of the classic starts to a big Monday in Big East basketball when they came out wearing the Carnesecca sweater. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Oh boy, don't make me reminisce about the players they used to have in the Big East. Don't make me reminisce.
That's a whole show we can do someday.
Mullen, Mark Jackson, Walter Berry, and on and on. Oh,
and
man.
Speaking of Syracuse, I called this about 2 months ago. Jerry McNamara, it doesn't look like he's going to be the next coach at Syracuse. And well-deserved, I think. They wanted to stay in the program, and Jerry McNamara is the guy.
Let me ask you this: how much say will Jim Boeheim have in the hiring process?
I think he had a lot, and he loves Jerry. He loves Jerry McNamara, and I think this. I don't think they would have signed off on anybody without his blessing, quite frankly. Now, he did say he didn't feel they needed to stay with somebody in the family too. He thought they could go outside. I saw him in an interview last week. But there's also talk that he wanted Jerry McNamara to be the coach, but didn't think he was ready, so he sent him off to coach, somewhere else and get a little seasoning, and now he's back. So AD obviously out. Jerry McNamara will be the head coach there. That's pretty much a done deal. You'll see it probably today or tomorrow.
What Boeheim should have done? Coach one more year and have his protege sit next to him on the bench.
With the NIT. NITs don't count. Nobody cares about them. Tom Izzo's another guy who has some critics ripping. He thinks he should. He's a great.
We got to get top baseball predictions, Keith.
Just getting through here. So we're going to move on to baseball because we do have opening day on Netflix. Jesus.
Netflix opening day.
That's another story. We're going to go through our predictions just because the season will start. I will do this on the MLB update again on Friday, and maybe my picks will change. I don't know by then.
The season has started, and you've already been accused of, once things start taking a little peak. I kind of enjoyed that when you were accused. I enjoyed that.
Never posted any picks. Anyway, let's start the American League East. I will give you mine first here. I like
the top five in order.
I like the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Orioles, the Red Sox, much improved Red Sox, but I think this is a good division. And the Rays, who I think their time may have passed, is finding a way to contend. Those are my teams in order here. Yankees with a little, listen, I want to put a qualifier on here too. I'm a Yankee fan. I had a hard time putting the Yankees second here. And you'll find out later I have them in the wild card, but there you have it.
Yeah, you're going to do win totals later or what?
I don't know if we're going to have time, but
I'll do my win totals if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I don't have to do win totals. I'll just do the order.
You know what we'll do?
I like the Yankees to win the division. The Yankees are solid from top to bottom. The only thing I have a little misgiving on, the bullpen is okay, but not strong. It's okay.
That's fair.
So we're going to see how the bullpen plays out. If they pitch up to their potential, then no moves necessarily have to be made, but Brian Cashman might need to tweak it. I like the Red Sox second. The pickup of a guy like Sonny Gray might even be invaluable. Third, I like the Baltimore Orioles. I like Gunnar Henderson to develop into a star, and getting Pete Alonso, I think, is going to be. The Blue Jays fourth, even though Dylan ceased.
Wow.
They'll have a winning record, but you come that close to winning the World Series and don't. It might be a little bit of a bummer. And we agree the Rays last. They might not be that bad, but are they going to beat any of these other four teams out? So Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles, Blue Jays, and Rays. That's
really good division. Really good division. And I think you're underestimating the Jays, though, because that Jay team is bringing back a lot. If George Springer's got enough left, it's not just Cease.
But look at the other teams, the way they've improved.
I like
the Red Sox have made moves, and the Red Sox won the playoffs last year.
Listen,
it looks like they've improved.
I think the Red Sox have improved. That pitching staff, especially, is one of the better ones in baseball now. But I just feel like, again, it's probably my Red Sox bias. Let's move to the Central here. Actually, I'll put up this real quick. There's Brian's picks: Yankees, Boston, Toronto, Baltimore, and Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
In the Central, I have the Tigers. I have the Royals finishing second. Indians third. The White Sox, I think, will be much improved. Might even push the Indians for third. And the Twins, I think, are going to be abysmal, finishing last here.
Well, Keith, we have practically the same thing. Like you, I have the Tigers first, Kansas City second. Kansas City, that could generate a lot of offense this year. So Cleveland third. I have Minnesota fourth, the Cubs fifth. I mean, the White Sox fifth. I mean, the White Sox they were horrendous last year.
They were, but they're starting to show signs of life.
They're going to improve a little bit. How can they? They have nowhere to go but up.
Well,
But the Twins should barely have enough to hold off the White Sox to not finish last.
I think the Indians might be the biggest disappointment here because they did nothing in the offseason, and I wasn't crazy about this team.
Jose Ramirez have another big season, future Hall of Famer.
Good player. In the West, I like the Mariners a lot. I love this pitching staff. I've raved about it for 2 years now. I think the offense is very good. The losing Suarez hurts a little bit, but signing Naylor, I think, really was a key to this team continuing to do well. My big surprise here is going to be the A's finishing second. I'd like to see them have a little more pitching, but I love that offense. I like the Astros third, Rangers disappointing fifth, and then, of course, the hapless Angels to finish last.
Well, their fans will be entertained.
They'll be entertained, they'll be safe, and they'll have affordable tickets.
Entertainment. Our standings are pretty close, except the flip-flop one thing. I like Seattle first, the same way as you. You're picking Oakland second. I'm picking Houston second. I know the A's are improving, and with all their young players and all. Did I put down Oakland Athletics? Are they the Las Vegas Athletics?
They're Sacramento, really, but
Sacramento. What athletics are they? I'm looking at what I jotted down, but I like Houston to be in second there because Houston's proven this season they're going to win more than they lost. I like the Athletics third. Rangers fourth, but if Jacob deGrom is healthy all year and has a great year, that kind of changes the equation a little bit, perhaps. I like the Angels last. So Seattle, Houston, Oakland, Texas, and the Angels.
Before we move on here, the Mariners, there's a story this morning that Rosarina and Raleigh made up from their little dust up in the WBC. I said at the time it's a lot of hoo-ha about nothing. But do you think that's a story even a little bit?
No, leave it alone. Things are taken out of context. You can see two people getting in a small argument about something, a small disagreement, being a little annoyed, and everyone wants to jump all over it. Leave it alone. Listen, Rosarina was a little out of line with the reporter from Mexico calling Raleigh a lowlife or something to that effect because he wouldn't shake his hand at his teammates. But, he apologized later. Everyone knows the relationship between two people, who are around those people. So those, they're the ones that know them, don't take it seriously. It's us on the outside who has tried to make a story out of it. It's done with. The Rosarina and Raleigh are in a good place as far as I'm concerned. And even if they're not, they just have to perform in their darn job, so they won't go out to dinner together.
Everybody has to love each other. Look at the '78 Yankees. Nobody didn't like it. Nobody liked anybody else.
No, the '78 Yankees. I went to a game very quickly when they played the Texas Rangers. This was in the summer. Bucky Dent made two phenomenal defensive plays at shortstop. Phenomenal. Yep. And I'm looking at him when he gets back to the dugout. No one's patting him on the back. Everyone's just going their own way. I mean,
I always thought Bucky was kind of an outcast on that team. I don't know why. I never feel like he fit with anybody else on the team. Really, a great player, a great fielder, but
not a great player. I don't get carried away.
He had a home run, big home run. I get carried away.
He had a great moment. He was okay as a player.
Danny would like us to move on to the real league, the National League. I think that's a little shot of my junior varsity comments I make about some games.
Well, we got it. We'll do the playoff predictions after American League. Let's do that.
No, let's do our wild cards. I have the Yankees, the Royals, and the Orioles in the wild cards.
I mean, I don't have the Orioles making the playoffs, even though I think the Orioles will bounce back somewhat from last year and have a winning record. But I see the Red Sox as a wild card, the Astros as a wild card, and the KC Royals as a wild card.
Interesting. The Astros are just, I feel like their time has passed now.
I was thinking that way, but the way they lost in the playoffs, the way they got edged out for the division at the end of the season last year. But They're the Astros. They always seem to find a way.
They do find a way. I'll give you that. I mean, I've said that for a couple of years now, but I think I'm finally off their bandwagon. ALCS, I've got, while everybody else seems to be down on the Blue Jays, I'm not. I've got the Blue Jays and Mariners again in the ALCS, and I have the Mariners going to the World Series for the American League.
The Mariners. You know, the Mariners were so close last year. People forget. They think about the Blue Jays being so desperately close to winning the World Series and not quite doing it, which has to be the ultimate downer. You know, with the Blue Jays, after they lose the 18-inning game to go down 2-1, they win the next two in LA.
Yeah.
And they're up 3-2 going back to Toronto and somehow don't quite nail it down. Oh, man, that lasts for your lifetime, the thought of that. That's tough. But what about the Mariners? They never went to World Series, and they had the Blue Jays, you know, on the ropes then. Somehow it got away from them, and they didn't get to the World Series. Aren't they going to be a little down, perhaps?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. Are you down, or does it give you more incentive, or use it as a learning experience?
I get out of here with these learning experiences. The learning experience teams are the teams that don't come that close to making it, you know, not the ones that come a strike away and out away. Come on, don't tell me learning experience.
Did you give me your teams in your LCS? Did you give me your teams in the LCS?
I mean, you have $1 million that someone, you know, all you have to do is pick it up. And you bend down and you feel it on your fingertips and the wind blows it away, and you're not going to come back later not getting the money and saying, next time I'm going to know the way the wind blows to cut the money off and scoop it up. Come on, get out of here.
Yeah,
wait. Let me just say, I like the.
Hold on. Let me use your analogy. Yes, I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to dive on the freaking money and not let it get away from me. I'm not going to bend it over and pick it up.
Yeah. $1 million might not be there later, but to go over the whole playoff scenario very quickly.
Did you give me an answer?
No, I shouldn't have brought it up. My fault. Don't want to hear you diving on $1 million, Keith. My fault. I opened the floodgates for you.
Give me your American League champion.
Okay. Wait. In the playoffs, Astros over Royals, Tigers over Red Sox, Yankees over Astros, Mariners over Tigers. And then the American League Championship Series, Yankees over Mariners in 6 games.
You got a better crystal ball than me. Mariners
over Mariners in the American League Championship Series. And I'm sure the Mariners won't be calling it a learning experience, coming up a little short for the second year in a row.
Now, let me qualify as well, because everybody tells me I'm too hard on my teams. I'm a Yankee fan. I want to be wrong. I want the Yankees to be in the World Series. Let's be clear, as the season goes on, all right, I picked the Mariners. Doesn't mean I want them to win. So anyway.
No, you're calling it like you sing it.
Yeah. So I like to be wrong. In these situations when I pick against my teams, I want to be wrong. Moving on to the National League. In the East, I like the Phillies. I like the Mets only because the Braves pitching, I don't think the Braves have nearly enough pitching. Otherwise, I would have picked the Braves. I like the Mets to finish second. Braves. Nationals starting to get better. Might start to push up, but not yet. And then the Marlins to finish fifth.
Okay, I mean, I like the Mets. I know they lost Alonso. I know they lost Edwin Diaz. They made a few other good moves to offset it. Mets just have to play better than they did last year. That was the problem. They have the personnel to play better. I anticipate they will. I think they'll win the National League East. I like the Phillies second, in part because I can't quite trust the Braves completely after last year. Outside of Chris Sale, their ace, their pitching staff is
That's where
I don't care how good Ronald Acuna is. The starting pitching, I don't fully trust. I know it's Stride, but I don't trust it. Miami fourth. Miami has this talent. You don't know what to make out of them. But they're not going to be a disaster. The Nationals are a disaster. They're going to be terrible this year. They're going to be dreadful. So they're going to come in last. The Mets, Phillies, Braves, Marlins, Nationals. That's my order.
Okay. On to the Central. I had the Cubs. I had the Pirates. I don't like this division. Stinks, by the way. Cubs, Pirates, Brewers, Cardinals, and the Reds are absolutely terrible. No pitching with the injuries they had. Their defense is terrible. They got some good bats, but they're gonna be the most talented team to finish last. This division is like won by default by the Cubs, and I think the Pirates will surprise a little bit with that pitching staff. Especially once they bring up Griffin, the kid they just sent down to the minor, Connor Griffin, I think his name is. He'll be back at some point this year.
I don't know what you're looking at, Keith. With the Reds, you're out of sorts to pick them to finish last. They got a lot of young talent. And if it all gels, and I think it will, I think the Reds are going to win the division. You're picking them last. What a disparity. I'm picking them to win the division. I'm picking the Cubs to come in second. I know they lost Kyle Tucker, but they did get Alex Bregman, who still has a season of two, a really good season of two, I would think, left.
I like Bregman.
The Brewers, due to take a dip. They lost Freddie Peralta, who's very important to them. And
they also traded their third baseman, who finished third in the Rookie of the Year, to the Red Sox this spring. I don't know what they're doing.
I'm saying I think they'll dip down to third after having the best record in the National League last year. Pittsburgh fourth, but much improved. Pittsburgh will be much improved, but still, fourth place. And I like the Cardinals, who have, no identity really at this point to finish last.
Very
so
sad.
The Reds, the Cubs, the Brewers, the Pirates, and the Cardinals.
One note on that division: you can put Marmol on day-to-day watch for getting fired. I'm surprised he's still got his job now. This team is the Cardinals. It's sad what's happened to this team, who's been historically very good and competitive, and now they're neither. So kind of sad. Out west. First place is easy. I can say once again, I'm going to say the Dodgers won 115 games, but maybe boredom will stop that like it did last year. I like the Giants. I like Tony Vitelli. I'm one of the few guys who seems to like this hire. I think it will instill a different attitude maybe than some other major league teams. I like the Giants to finish second. Padres finish probably a distant third. And then you've got, of course, you got the D-backs third. The Padres have got fourth, and the Rockies obviously fifth. Speaking of teams that are never going anywhere,
it's slightly different. The Dodgers are obviously a slam dunk pick for first. I like the Padres second. The Padres always give the Dodgers a battle for the division. And why should it be that much different this year? I mean, I don't think they're going to come close to the Dodgers, but the Padres, led by, Machado, Tatis, is still, I think a good team. Arizona, you're not sure what to make out of them, but I'll pick them third. Giants, they get a college coach, and you're getting all excited about it. I just
love somebody goes outside the box, and the Giants are usually better than the sum of their parts all the time. So,
there's boss. I remember the Angels got Bobby Winkle. That didn't quite work out from Arizona. College coach, and the Rockies. It's a tradition. They should come in a distant last. So I like the Dodgers, Padres, Arizona, Giants, Rockies. Who do you like as your wild cards?
I've got the Giants, the Mets, kind of as a default, and well, that can't be right. I must have made a mistake here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say the Pirates.
Okay.
Pirates.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a bold pick. The Pirates, I think, a year away, though. That's my feeling.
I think it's entirely possible, but I want to put one outlier in there, so that's I'll take the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, the wild cards, I think, are going to be, because I like the Mets to win the division. The Phillies have enough talent that they're going to be a wild card. I think the Padres, I was talking before, I think they're a traditional wild card. And I like the Braves to sneak in as the third wild card, even though I'm not that high on them. I think as little as 85 games could get the final wild card spot.
I think you're right. That's why I like Pittsburgh in the mix.
And how do you see the National League playoff.
NLC, I can't do the matchups like you did. I can only get to the NLCS because I don't have a crystal ball to pick who will play. So I'll give you my NLCS. I've got the Dodgers and the Giants playing a classic 7-game series, and the Dodgers win.
The Dodgers find a way to eke by. It seems like the last 2 years, even 2 of the games against the Yankees 2 years ago, they easily could have lost. I like the Reds over the Braves. Believe it or not, the Reds, who you picked last to win a playoff game. Then I like the Phillies over the Padres. Then I like the Dodgers over the Phillies. I like the Mets over the Reds. And then in the National League Championship Series, I like the Dodgers to get out the brooms and sweep the Mets in 4 games in the National League Championship Series.
In embarrassing fashion,
Jack. Embarrassing. So after having a wonderful year and getting Mets fans excited, it's going to end in a downer, because the Dodgers will be too strong. What about your World Series?
Oh, we both have. I believe
in Seattle in the World Series.
I have Seattle and the Dodgers in the World Series. I know you have the Yankees and Dodgers. I think, Danny, Jack, Seattle finds a way to get it done. Second best pitching staff, unfortunately, to the Dodgers. Just enough offense. If their pitching stays healthy, this team is going to be really, really good. Cal Raleigh's not going to have the same kind of year. I get it. I just think the Mariners are ready to show the world that they have a baseball team in Seattle. And I think they upset the Dodgers in the World Series and stopped them from winning 3 straight.
Well, I'm not low on Seattle because I'm picking them to get to the American League Championship Series. So I'm not taking them lightly. Seattle will be a sentimental favorite because the Dodgers are now looked at as the big bad bullies in a way. And you want someone to take them down for whatever reason. But I think that the Dodgers might be, believe it or not, getting a tiny bit long in the tooth because what's the heart and soul of the team? You could say it's Ohtani, but you could also say it's, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And Mookie Betts is already declining. He's slipping a little. He is Mookie Betts. He's not the same player he was. Freddie Freeman is gently declining. Gently. You can't see it so obviously now, but there's going to be a point where Freddie Freeman's going to take that dip. He'll still be a decent player. I don't see him being as dominant, but with that said, I think the Dodgers have one more big year in them where I think they'll win something like 101 games during the regular season. They won't blow you away like winning 110, 12 or whatever. And the Dodgers are going to beat the Yankees in the World Series in 6 games.
Yeah.
But that would be great for baseball. Yankees and Dodgers.
It would be great.
Baseball. Dodgers and Seattle would be good for baseball too, to see Seattle finally go to their first World Series.
It would be good. And we saw the Yankees-Dodgers just a couple years ago, right? So
how can you not love it? Ohtani and Judge on opposite sides of the fence.
It'd be awesome.
The World Series, it's the best TV.
Yeah,
Dodgers and Yankees are like the old-time Lakers and Celtics, Magic and Bird going at it. It's great TV, great viewing.
Well, there you got our picks, guys. We're kind of all over the board here. So
I would like the Dodgers to win their 3rd World Series in a row. But I'll make a prediction now. Dodgers will win their 3rd World Series in a row, but the following year, I don't see the dynasty quite continuing to win 4 or 5 in a row. But, let them take care of business and win their 3rd in a row. I like them over the Yankees. But you like Seattle to upend the Dodgers this year. That's interesting.
In a classic series, similar to what we saw last year, you're going to see a great World Series, I think, with the Mariners and the Dodgers.
Julio Rodriguez would then be MVP. He'd have to go crazy.
He would, and he needs to have a good year for them to have a good year anyway. He's got to play better than last year because they did lose. They do lose some offense with Suarez and whatnot being gone. Anyway, there's our picks. We'll do more of this as we go along. We'll follow these picks. I'll do some stuff on the Major League Baseball update on Friday. Jack, or don't forget tonight with Glove Fist, Frank and Jack will have Michael Spinks on again. I got the hardcover book, so
thanks for the support. 3:30 this afternoon. I'm on Sirius Radio.
You know what?
Look at the Combat section to get the Sirius. They're just sending me the link. I hope I don't screw it up, Keith.
What's the answer to that, Jack? You're very, very.
And then 7:00 Glove Fist. Michael Spinks is scheduled to come on 7:15. We begin at 7. I hope he doesn't screw up the link.
Well, hopefully it's good. Guys, a good show this morning. Jack, congratulations again on the book. We'll be watching tonight, and we'll show you Friday morning with another update for Jack and Keith's Weekend Playbook. See you guys later. Bye-bye.